Before Pablo Escobar became a global symbol of narcotics and violence, before his face appeared on wanted posters and magazine covers, before presidents spoke his name with anger and fear, he was simply a boy growing up in a country struggling to define itself. And that's the uncomfortable truth about Escobar. He wasn't born into a criminal dynasty. He wasn't destined for infamy from day one. He emerged from instability, from inequality, from corruption, from opportunity colliding with desperation. His story is not just about a drug lord. It's about what happens when ambition meets a broken system. It's about what happens when a man decides that power is more important than life. And it's about how one individual can force an entire country to bend around him. This is the story of Pablo Escobar, his rise, his empire, and the violent gravity that eventually pulled him down. Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia. But he grew up in Envigado, near Medellín, a city that would later become inseparable from his name. His father was a small farmer. His mother was a school teacher. They were not wealthy, but they were not destitute either. Colombia at the time was politically unstable, economically unequal, and socially fractured. Violence was not unusual. Corruption was embedded into institutions. As a child, Escobar showed two traits that would define him: intense ambition and a refusal to accept limits. Former acquaintances later recalled that even as a teenager, Pablo talked openly about becoming a millionaire by the age of 22. That wasn't a dream, it was a target. But there were no clear paths upward in 1960s Colombia for someone like him. Legal opportunities were scarce, social mobility was limited. So Escobar looked elsewhere. He began in petty crime, stealing cars, selling contraband cigarettes, forging lottery tickets, even reselling stolen tombstones. It sounds almost absurd, but it reveals something important. Escobar wasn't afraid of illegality. He saw rules as obstacles, not boundaries. And in a country where enforcement was inconsistent and corruption was widespread, that mindset paid. In the 1970s, cocaine was transforming from a niche drug into a booming international market. Demand in the United States was skyrocketing. Supply routes from Peru and Bolivia ran through Colombia. The product was small, easy to transport, enormously profitable. Escobar didn't invent cocaine trafficking, but he understood scale better than most. He began organizing distribution networks, refining smuggling methods, bribing officials, and creating a system where risk was minimized and profit maximized. Planes flew low over the Caribbean. Submarines would later be used. Hidden compartments were engineered with precision. What separated Escobar from smaller traffickers was not brutality at first. It was logistics. Soon, alongside partners like the Ochoa brothers, he co-founded what became known as the Medellín Cartel. By the early 1980s, the cartel was responsible for the majority of cocaine entering the United States. The money was so overwhelming that it created new problems. Escobar reportedly lost millions annually to rats eating stored cash because they physically couldn't launder it fast enough. He had become one of the richest criminals in history. But wealth alone was never enough for him. Escobar understood something many dictators and criminals fail to grasp. Fear controls people temporarily, but loyalty controls them longer. So he invested in the poor. He built entire housing projects in Medellín. He funded soccer fields, churches, and community centers. He paid for surgeries. He gave cash to families who had nothing. In neighborhoods abandoned by the government, Escobar filled the void. To many residents, he wasn't a villain. He was the only one who delivered results. This dual identity, criminal mastermind and local hero, allowed him to move through society with complex protection. Some protected him out of fear, others protected him out of gratitude. In 1982, Escobar leveraged this popularity and won a seat as an alternate member of Colombia's Congress. It was a shocking move, a drug trafficker entering politics openly. But it also revealed his ultimate goal: legitimacy. He didn't just want to be rich. He wanted to be untouchable. Before we continue into the years of bombings and assassinations, we need to pause. Because Pablo Escobar was not just building an empire, he was building an identity. And to understand what happened next, we have to understand the psychology behind it. Escobar did not behave like a typical businessman, even within the drug trade. Many traffickers were discreet. They preferred invisibility. They valued survival over spectacle. Escobar was different. He needed to be seen. From early on, he showed a deep craving not just for wealth, but for recognition. He didn't want to be rich in silence. He wanted to be admired, feared, remembered. The houses he built for the poor were acts of generosity, yes, but they were also acts of branding. Every neighborhood he funded carried his name like a signature. This suggests something deeper than greed. Psychologists often describe individuals like Escobar as possessing traits associated with extreme narcissism, a belief in personal exceptionalism, an inability to tolerate humiliation, and a constant need for external validation. But Escobar's psychology was more complex than simple vanity. He grew up in a country where power often came through force or corruption. Legitimacy was fragile. Institutions were weak. In that environment, Escobar learned that control was survival. And once he tasted control, he escalated it. There was also his relationship with humiliation. Throughout his early political career, when members of Congress publicly exposed him as a drug trafficker, Escobar did not retreat. He retaliated. That moment, when he was expelled from formal politics, marked a psychological shift. It wasn't just a professional setback, it was a personal insult. From that point forward, his war against the state became emotional. Revenge began to merge with strategy. Another key trait was his tolerance for violence. Escobar did not merely authorize brutality, he normalized it. For him, violence became transactional. It was not chaos, it was policy. Plata o plomo wasn't just a slogan, it was a worldview. Everyone has a price, and if they don't they can be removed. As Colombian authorities in the United States increased pressure to extradite traffickers, Escobar escalated. He introduced a simple phrase that defined an era: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Take the bribe or take the bullet. Judges were assassinated. Journalists were murdered. Police officers were targeted in systematic campaigns of terror. Politicians who supported extradition policies became immediate enemies. One of the most devastating moments came in 1989, when a commercial airplane was bombed in an attempt to assassinate a presidential candidate. Innocent civilians died. Escobar was no longer just a criminal entrepreneur. He had become a domestic terrorist. Colombia entered what many consider one of the darkest periods in its history. Explosions shook cities. Car bombs became common. Families lived with constant uncertainty. And yet, even during this chaos, Escobar maintained his public image in certain communities. Power, in his world, was a balance of charity and carnage. The illusion of surrender. By 1991, under immense pressure, Escobar negotiated a deal with the Colombian government. He agreed to surrender under one condition: he would build and control his own prison. The result was La Catedral, a mountaintop compound overlooking Medellín. It had a soccer field, a bar, comfortable rooms, and unrestricted access to visitors. It was less a prison and more a private headquarters. From inside La Catedral, Escobar continued managing parts of his empire. He even ordered torture and execution of rivals within its walls. The illusion of justice collapsed. When authorities attempted to move him to a real prison, Escobar escaped. The war resumed, more personal than ever. After his escape in 1992, Escobar became the most wanted man in the world. Colombian forces formed elite search units. The United States provided intelligence support. Rival groups, including Los Pepes, began targeting his network and allies. For over a year, Escobar lived like a ghost, constantly moving, communicating through payphones, hiding in safe houses. But something had changed. The man who once controlled entire cities was now shrinking into survival mode. On December 2nd, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, Colombian security forces traced a call he made to his son. They surrounded a middle-class home in Medellín. A gunfight broke out across rooftops. Moments later, Escobar was dead. Whether he was shot by police or took his own life remains debated, but symbolically, it didn't don't matter. The king was gone. Escobar's death did not end drug trafficking. It did not end violence. It did not heal Colombia overnight. The power vacuum created new cartels. The structures he built adapted and evolved. But something significant shifted. The myth fractured. Today, Escobar's former estate, Hacienda Nápoles, is no longer a monument to excess, but a public attraction and a symbol of transformation. Colombia has spent decades rebuilding its global image. Yet Escobar's story still fascinates the world. Why? Because he represents a paradox. He rose from poverty to unimaginable wealth. He defied governments. He bent institutions. But he also left behind graves, trauma, and a country scarred by fear. His life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about inequality, power, and the seductive nature of wealth without limits. Pablo Escobar once said that everyone has a price. He believed loyalty could be bought, justice could be negotiated, life could be calculated in profit margins. For a time, he was right. But power built on fear eventually isolates. Wealth built on destruction eventually collapses inward. Escobar did not fall because he ran out of money. He fell because no empire sustained by violence can remain stable forever. And in the end, the rooftops of Medellín became the final stage for a man who once believed he could outrun the consequences of his own ambition.